listen, Florian, I'll allow you just to, the way we want to do this, I think, is we're going to allow both of you to do a little piece on each of your institutions and the work you're doing, and then I will just look back in, and then we'll have a bit of a Q&A session if that's okay with both of you. So if you'd like to share your screen, Florian, and I'll just mute and duck out.
I have not. I don't have a presentation prepared for this because it's very, very quick to give us more time and also not eat up on Tom's time. I'm Florian. I'm a reader in digital creativity at the Department for Theatre, Film, Television, Interactive Media at the University of York. Gosh, that's a long one. Short TFTI. And I am also the R&D director and principal investigator of Weaver. So Weaver is one of the 4 demonstrator of the Audience of the Future programs. We are the sports entertainment demonstrator. And by we, I mean a fantastic consortium led by ESL UK. So ESL are the largest global content producer in esports, and also including fantastic companies, including Rewind, and working very closely with Sol on this. So our spiel really is look at immersive tech from the perspective of live sports. And I should say, Weaver is one project. We have a very strong culture now at York in digital creativity. We've got the Access Story. So thanks a lot, Asha, for giving us a shout out. And we also have a couple of other projects with the local and regional screen industries. So very excited about that. So for Weaver, our thing is to say, how does immersion and how do the Audience of the Future engage in live sports entertainment? And for us, the challenge is, of course, that it happens live and it's unpredictable by nature. So our approach to that is to use data analytics and AI to generate experience spaces. First, they are really just data and sort of semantic representations of data. But then with the help of the fantastic companies, including Rewind, these spaces come to life and become immersive. So we've got everything from an interactive Twitch extension that gives you on-demand and personalized data, all the way to a multi-user immersive space in which multiple people can do analysis and be playful and watch esports together. And that, of course, has then a ramp up towards the traditional sports. And so, we're really fascinated about AI and data-driven technologies as a complement to human creativity. So we are trying to generate interactivity and personalized experiences on the fly, which we know our audience and probably the broader audience of the future more and more respond to. So the kind of one-for-all coverage is on the decrease, and interactive short bursts of interaction, social experiences are on the rise, as preaching to the converted. But yeah, we've now created various touch points and have done R&D, research and development really tightly closely with the companies, and we've showcased a bunch of things. A bunch of our touch points are on the website, so weaver.tv if you're interested. But I knew this was a 25-minute panel, and obviously wanting to give yeah, thanks. Basically that's sort of my brief elevator pitch.
Cheers, Florian. That was really interesting. Let me just bring it in, Tom, because I think we were all seeing Tom with his fantastic background whilst he was speaking. So let me just bring him in as well. And what I'll do is I'll demote you temporarily, Florian. That's no okay. That's okay. And I'll let Tom just talk for a little bit about Leeds and the work that's going on there, and then we'll bring you both back, if that's okay. Cool. So Tom, the floor's yours.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jim. Yeah, no slides from me either, but hopefully the exciting background is compensating for that somewhat. So I have two roles at the University of Leeds. I'm a lecturer in digital media in the School of Media and Communication, but I'm also the academic lead for cultural engagement with the Centre for Immersive Technologies, which I guess is probably of far greater relevance to the session today. So we have this new cross-cutting research institute at the University of Leeds, and we have 5 themes for this new research centre. We're pioneering immersive technology research related to human-centred design, health and well-being, education, decision-making, and the area that I'm looking after, cultural engagement. So lots of really exciting work going on at the university in partnership with leading commercial partners. In the health and well-being area, we have training simulations for emergency responders, recreating emergency scenarios and seeing how nurses and doctors may respond to different types of emergency scenario. We even have neurosurgeons wearing HoloLenses in the operating theatre and augmenting the kind of data that they are seeing with the experience of the actual patient. The area that I can talk most confidently about, though, is our work related to cultural engagement. That's the theme that I'm looking after. So really, this area is around how immersive technologies might deepen people's engagement with and understanding of sites of cultural and historical significance. So really interested in how immersive technologies might be used at all kinds of different sites to really get visitors to engage with those sites. And as I say, really to try and deepen their understanding of what those sites might mean. So some examples, I've been involved in a number of collaborative projects with the Science Museum Group, really interested in the idea of how immersive technologies might be used to provide forms of virtual access to the otherwise inaccessible privileged spaces of knowledge production associated with museums. So what might it mean to particular communities to use virtual technologies as a way of accessing the museum archives and collections that are intended to represent that community? Does that really shift some of the traditional power relationships over the ownership of museum collections and artifacts? So we've created virtual archives of museum collections and archives, and had members of communities going in, accessing these collections, but not only purely having an experience of these collections, but then also being given the power to contribute to the collections. What would it mean to be able to take a virtual representation of a museum artifact and not only experience it, but inscribe your own knowledge and understanding into it? If I have a particular background or experience with a particular museum artifact, can we use immersive technologies to give people the power to embed that knowledge into the collection for other visitors? I've been doing a lot of projects, believe it or not, with Holocaust memorial sites. How might immersive technologies be used to deepen people's understandings of what happened during the Third Reich? Really, really interesting work, thinking about different types of immersive technologies, not just VR, immersive and embodied sound recordings. How might they be used to preserve memorial sites? Again, to create wider access to memorial sites. And at the moment, the thing that I'm most excited about, the idea of using virtual and immersive representations of memorial sites to link these sites together around the world. So what might it mean for people's understandings of the Holocaust to be physically on site at, say, Neuengamme, but then to be able to take that experience to other related sites around the world, and maybe following the story of a particular prisoner who transitioned to other locations, and then through immersive technologies take that experience on. Really interesting ethical questions though, as I'm sure you can imagine, around this sort of work, how we use immersive technologies to represent really complex and challenging narratives around particular locations. So it's lots of ethical questions around that type of work. One final example would be also really interested in how immersive technologies might be used to represent particular cultures. So again, believe it or not, I spent a week a year ago living in an indigenous community in Bahia in Brazil, and working with members of that community to create immersive sound recordings of the lived experience of that community. Then exhibiting these sound recordings at different places around the world. Can we use these types of technologies as a way of creating shared understandings around different cultures? So co-creative methods are also something that we're really big on in the cultural engagement theme, not just creating fantastic projects ourselves, but thinking about ways that immersive technologies might be used to empower members of communities to tell their own stories, participatory, co-creative technologies around lived experience, co-curation of museum collections. All those kind of things are big questions. So we're building the immersive technology facilities at the University of Leeds right now, but we're very much also partnering with commercial partners around access to particular technologies, and really being obviously a very research intensive university, trying to ask and answer all of these critical questions about the impact of this emerging technology on our everyday lives. So I hope that's a helpful overview of what we're up to at Leeds. Hopefully now we can have a bit of a Q&A or discussion around some of these themes.
Cheers, great, thanks, Tom. I've brought Florian back into the discussion, if that's okay as well. So can I ask Florian, can I ask you a quick question before we kind of go to the audience? So forgive me, I know when I started to learn a bit more about what you were doing at York and about esports generally, I was absolutely blown away with the numbers of people who are engaging right now in esports today. You know, not that this is a future opportunity or future kind of market that is going to develop. It's actually today. So can you just put some numbers to the kind of scale of what's actually happening today that you see in esports in terms of take up, participation, and those kind of things? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, basically, in last year, it's 580 million people around the globe watched esports, and this is not including the players, right? This is really sort of the number of people who tune into an esports broadcast online. And you know, there's been a steady between 10 and 20% year-on-year growth, and you know, there's definitely a strong trajectory there. There's still to go. And just to give you an understanding of also the commercial opportunities here. So first of all, we've got esports. You know, I think it's almost 50% of esports viewers either already have or are planning to buy a VR headset within the next year. So they're a young tech-savvy audience. They're ahead of the curve. So you've got the large percentage of early adopters in that target group. And you know, when you look at from a commercial side, per head revenue in esports is currently somewhere around £3 to £4. In basketball, traditional sports is around 50. So you're looking at a really, really interesting space for commercial exploitation as well. So both culturally and commercially, esports are a really, really fascinating space.
And again, I mean, I guess it's a question to both of you. Since the spring and the situation we found ourselves in terms of the cultural space, Tom, what have you had kind of first-hand experience of the numbers that some of the institutes you've been working with have had in terms of take-up of what assets are available in a virtual space?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm doing a lot of work with cultural institutions, and they're seeing huge spikes in the use of their online digital resources. This is obviously fairly unsurprising with homeschooling and things taking place. That, yeah, big uptake in the use of digital educational resources, immersive and otherwise. And yeah, a lot of current funding opportunities around new ways of bringing particularly 18 to 35 users into those spaces. Got a number of projects at the minute that are around trying to find ways to invite 18 to 35 users into museum collections, into art exhibitions. And it's much like you would have with a visit to a physical site. You need that sort of gateway into the collection. If you visit a museum or a memorial site, I'm sure you will have all experienced that there are particular objects or particular people's stories that they use as a way of getting people into the collection, as a way of exploring, piquing people's interest as they walk through the door. So I've got a lot of projects at the minute that are around what's the online, the digital, the immersive equivalent of that. What's the kind of gateway to get people to engage with these sorts of collections? Because once they're in and they're interacting, then that tends to become quite a natural and organic experience. But it's actually getting people to engage with those sort of online materials in the first place is one of the really interesting questions we're trying to deal with at the minute.
Thanks. Cheers, Tom. I mean, Florian, again, where is it going to go next in terms of esports, do you think, in the work you're doing at York? Where do you see you're in the, you've accessed Research Council funding and a huge round of Innovate funding and AHRC funding to get where you are today. So where do you see it going in the next 5 years? What are the areas that you're looking to research into that perhaps could find commercial opportunities further down the line?
I mean, I've only really got authority to speak about the esports portion. There's obviously a very varied landscape of larger scale initiatives that run, which go from everywhere from digital heritage all the way to health and well-being and digital storytelling. I do think that from an esports perspective, what we feel is very special is that we are, with our technology readiness, witnessing sort of the birth of a new mainstream form of entertainment and engagement. And it really kind of ties in with what Solis described. The behavioral patterns of the audience change dramatically. Every one of us, I'm pretty sure this resonates with Tom, who wants to engage millennials or Gen Zs, know that sort of long 1 hour lectures and sort of linear things don't work. So I think we feel we're in a really great space to have a head start and look in the here and now, what we can, how we can engage the audience. Literally, I know it sounds a bit corny, but the audience of the future right now. And at the end of the day, I think that immersive storytelling supported by data, we just have real-time election going on with lots of data flowing around. We have democratic processes. We have things like citizen science and digital civics, where engagement and the storytelling and immersive technology will become very relevant in that combination. So we really see esports and the current sort of activity we do as a stepping stone to broadening the application of these sort of research insights and technologies to other areas as well. And let's not forget the creative aspects. I think, we've predominantly, I think, talked about so far about the sort of consumption, and of course there's interactivity and so on, but I'm personally super excited about virtual reality and augmented reality as facilitating human creativity and learning. So engagement beyond entertainment and engagement beyond consumption, but essentially creating spaces to create content and share it. So I think there's some really untapped potential there.
Cheers, thank you. And I mean, and Tom, you mentioned the facilities that are being created in the centre in Leeds. Do you want to just give us a taste of what they are and how we've got quite a lot of different businesses and freelancers on the session today, how they could, what they can do for local business and local freelance community in this part of the world?
Sure, yeah, so as I'm sure most people will be aware, there are currently very large pots of funding available for research into immersive technologies. These are typically collaborations between an academic institution and a commercial partner. There's a lot of funding from the more conventional academic research councils where universities would typically take the lead and then find a commercial partner to collaborate with. There are also increasingly now a lot of relevant funding sources, such as XR Stories, which has already had a number of mentions, which are still this model of a collaboration between an academic and commercial partner. But in those funding models, it's actually the commercial entity who are the principal investigators, the leaders of the project, and academics are brought in a more of a consultancy role. So we've had a lot of success at Leeds, particularly through the Centre for Immersive Technologies, in securing that kind of funding. So if we're talking about opportunities for people who are on this session, I just encourage you to look at those funding calls like XR Stories, and to consider Leeds and of course York. Not wishing to tread on anybody's toes here. We are actually, all joking aside, currently trying to form a kind of northern powerhouse of expertise around AI and immersive technologies, which is going to be Leeds and Sheffield and York and Manchester, as a kind of a collective. But yeah, access to this funding relies on having an academic partner. Leeds are doing some great work in that area at the moment. And I think really what we're bringing is that criticality. We're asking those really important questions. And I think one of the reasons why we're having a lot of success with the research funding is, yeah, I think it's great that we're having these conversations about what VR and AR can facilitate, but also we do need to start problematizing these technologies. We do need to start asking really important questions around what problems they're going to create as well. And as I keep saying, a top research intensive university, we have academics who are very well positioned to ask those questions. So just for instance, the School of Psychology at Leeds is actually where the Centre for Immersive Technologies was born out of. And we have academics there researching into what might be the long-term side effects of young people having very long periods of exposure to immersive environments. And that research is being used to write the UK trading standards around VR headsets. So academic research, but very much informing industry policies and attracting relevant funding from those sorts of organisations, Immerse UK, and they just present really great opportunities for universities and businesses to collaborate in this sort of work. And just to say, one thing I always like to say on these sorts of calls is please don't think that us academics just sit around in tweed jackets and theorize about immersive technologies. I'm a practice-led researcher. I'm very much involved in the design, development, and evaluation of immersive technology products myself. So, I have had this question before, what does the academic bring to a project like this beyond asking questions around it? Well, yes, we will ask all those important questions, but we do actually make stuff as well, some of us. So we do get involved in that kind of work as well.
Cheers, thanks, Tom. I mean, one thing I would say is I mentioned Studio One when it was built back in 2005, and it was pretty much state of the art at the time in terms of a solution for the market, the market that the companies on the park serve in terms of live events, corporate events, those kind of things. For the next centre, we're absolutely thinking about how we fit it for the, you know, it is genuinely the audiences of the future. It is, you know, how are people going to consume these forms of performance and content going forward. So we're absolutely, we're not nowhere near as research intensive, and we're only just celebrating our 10th birthday next year. So we're absolutely a new kid on the block, but we would love to be part of that group and bring, you know, we can bring some really interesting industry talent and clients to the table in terms of taking these ideas and actually taking them to market. So maybe we should have a separate conversation about this Northern Powerhouse group and how Wakefield and South Kirby can become part of it.
Get yourself signed up.
Absolutely. We've had one question which I thought it made me laugh, so I'm gonna mention it. It's from a colleague of yours, Tom, actually, it's from Steve, and I won't. Well, I might read it out exactly as he's written it. It's basically, how are hardware manufacturers going to design a headset which doesn't make the wearer look like an arse? So if we're going to ensure adoption of VR tech going forward, I think Sol's covered some of the future tech ideas, and I know from our industrial work that there's some really interesting kind of head-up display elements that are being built into industrial applications. So that might be the answer. But the other point was, will the global imposition of PPE kind of help that? But so what do you think about hardware? You know, where hardware is going to go? Would you sign up to the kind of the direction of travel that Sol pointed out? Florian, you have a go first.
Well, I mean, I think the whole thing of looking silly has been kind of solved by the pandemic. Like, who's seeing people? Actually, I'm not. But I'm not an expert in hardware, other than sort of my perception is that really, in terms of ease of use, we talk a lot about resolution actually as one of the major breakthroughs for immersion. It's one of the last sort of steps that sort of break immersion in VR. But that's really all the smart things I can say about that. I can't claim to be an expert on hardware, but people need to look silly. And you know, these little goggly eyes that wobble about, I think everyone should get those.
I have absolutely zero opinion on that question, I'm afraid. I can bring absolutely nothing to that debate, other than I completely agree with the argument that we should absolutely embrace looking a complete arse whilst in VR. I think there's no problem with that at all.
Well, joking aside, we had a team here on the park that have developed, came out of Backstage and some really, really interesting student projects that have developed an environment which kind of embraces social immersion. So it's a space where you can build immersive environments, but experiencing them as a collective, perhaps not in quite the same intense way that you might be able to do with a headset. Have you looked at that kind of environment, Tom or Florian, in terms of your studies and work? Maybe Tom first, in terms of culture and heritage.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the really big and interesting developments where VR is going to go next is challenging this idea that it is an individualized and solitary experience. And I think that is going to be one of the most significant forthcoming contributions, the donning of the headset and disappearing into this completely individualized experience. That is something that needs to change really rapidly. And I think that's going to be very significant when we do so. I'm working currently with a company around real-time volumetric capture. So we could very soon have three-dimensional, live, real-time representations of ourselves projected into 3D environments, which I think would open up a lot of possibilities around shared online and virtual spaces. And yeah, some of my existing research, as I've already mentioned, is around the co-creation of those spaces. And I think the representation of yourself in a shared space is something that will really open that up. Things like Facebook Horizons, we're going to sort of co-create and build online virtual environments together, are going to be very significant. And I think one of the big things this is going to contribute to is it's going to really increase our understanding of the needs of different users in these types of environments. I've got a project at the minute that's around issues of ability and disability in these sorts of spaces. And we're really interested in what it might mean to have users with different disabilities constructing virtual spaces which others then share and experience. How would you build a representation of a modern city differently with particular disabilities? So again, the idea of shared understandings, as soon as we take VR away from this individualized, solitary experience, then I think there'll be some really, really interesting contributions to make.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, my experience gaming with my sons and my son's experience gaming with their friends, it's very much a kind of collective experience. And I can't imagine at the moment the three of us sitting in a room with all of our headsets on. Actually, part of it is, for starters, they want to do 58 things at once anyway. So they've got, multiple devices that they're following very different streams of content at the same time anyway. But anyway, listen, thank you very much, both of you, for contributing. I hope you're able to stay with us a little bit through the rest of the afternoon. And cheers. So thanks, Tom, and thanks, Florian. Nice to see you again.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much, Jim.